Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Tonight we're going to look at the Terraform, folder structure, because it is easy to set up something with Terraform. So then you would have your infrastructure as code, and of course you want to have that, but it is difficult, or it can be difficult if you are new to Terraform, to actually figure out what kind of folder structure should you use. And this is my best practice. The good thing about standards are that there are a lot of them. This is how I like to set up stuff in Terraform. So first of all, let's pretend that this best practice folder right here, that's your root folder to your project. In here, you would like to create a Terraform folder right here. And the first thing you do when you are new to Terraform, that is that you dump a lot of .tf files in this root folder right here. But you should actually not do that. You should stop already there, and then you should actually create a new directory named environments, because this is from where you would actually run your Terraform modules. So this is environments, and this is where you would set up different environments. Like you have a development environment, maybe you have a staging environment, staging. Maybe you have a test environment, etc., etc., etc. You set up those environments up into that folder right there. You want to create another folder again, and that is the modules folder. So this is for where you want to place all of your modules. And if you are in any doubt whether you should create a new module or not, then create a new module, because what often happens then is that you would actually create something like miscellaneous or something like that, and then you would dump all of your .tf files there, and the downside with that is that then it takes a lot of time to run everything. There is one thing you need to do, and that is you have to create one separate for deployment. You should never. You want to have a separate one for deployment. You do not want to mix your infrastructure with deploying a new application. This could be, let's say that you use Google Cloud Run, for instance, or one of the other clouds. They also have something just like Cloud Run, where you can run an application up in the sky in the clouds, and then you can run them there, and you can also deploy them. But you do not want to mix your deployment with the rest of your infrastructure. It could be that you actually need some databases. Maybe you need some databases for your application. You want to set that up separately from your deployment. Usually, because you do not want to risk that something happens to your databases. So you don't want to risk that someone destroy anything like that. So you want the databases there. Maybe you have some network set up in your cloud. It could also be that you have some RabbitMQ, some asynchronous queues, like you have some pops up stuff. Then you just create new folders. You need to create, whenever you're in any doubt, create a new folder. That's a good rule of thumb. It does not matter that you have few files in your modules folder right here. One file you would usually always have in your modules folder is the variables file. So you will have variables or vars.tf. In here you would define all of your variables, of course. So that is one file you would usually have. Another file that you often would have is a main.tf file. And this main.tf file, usually it will not have much. It will actually just have a Terraform and then the version, the required version that you want to use for this module right here. That will be inside the main.tf file. But it is a good practice to have a main.tf file. It's just being polite to the next developer. So you have these two files right here, the main, the variables, and then you have all your stuff. For instance, if you have a pops up, maybe you have a topic for incoming messages or something like that. .tf. So then you can define your topics for that right here, and so on. And there's one thing that we have not mentioned yet, and that is that when you are doing this, then very often you need to run as a service account, because very often you would have to use a pipeline to run these things. You are not administrator on all of the environments. Maybe you are allowed to be administrator on the develop environment, so you can actually try out all of your scripts and all of your things. So you need to create a module that will actually enable you to run the other modules. So you have to create an enabler module like this, and this enabler module will be called from its own environment. So this means that you will actually create a new environment up here. This could be development enabler like this, and then you would also create one for staging, etc., etc. And when you are then defined your modules, then you can just have something like module, and this module right here could be named enabler, and then you'll have some source, which is the folder. This was the wrong file now. Let us just go back. Sorry. We have the development enabler right here, and then we go and then we create a new file right here. This could be the main.tf file. This main.tf file, it will have something important. It has the modules that we want to run, and for the enabler environment, you only want the enabler module, because this is what actually enables us to run the rest of the modules. And another thing that's with the enabler environment is that these states are the only states that you want to save locally. So this means that these states are the only ones you need to run locally, and because you want to place the rest of the state files, you want to place those in buckets. You want to place those centralized, so other than so they're always synchronized. What happens if you have local template file or local state files is that they can come out of sync. They can also come out of sync if you use a bucket, but the chance is much less likely, because with the local files you have to remember to commit and push these state files every time. If you place the state files in a bucket instead, then you don't have to remember to do that. Then those are actually placed right there. So that is one thing you want in your enabler. You want to create a bucket or a stored place. You can use other things than buckets, but buckets is a good use for use case for this. So you want to have a bucket. So this could be a Terraform state bucket.tf like this. So here you have a bucket, so then you define your bucket right here. That is one thing you need in your enable project. You also need a service account. You cannot run everything as yourself. You actually have to, for some of the resources, you actually have to create a service account. Let me just use underscore instead of hyphens right here. So we do the same. We're consistent. So create a service account, and also give this service account the roles that it needs. So you need to have a lot of roles.tf. This service account is also the service account that you can use for your pipeline. This means your pipeline would actually log in as the service account. You will create a key for your service account that can then be used by your pipeline. It can also be used for you when you develop locally, as long as you develop locally, of course. And for instance, if you're using the Google providers, then you can just set Google_credentials and an environment variable. You can just set that and then point to the JSON file that you create from your service account. And then you actually have the same rights as your pipeline. And this makes development much faster and easier than if you would actually have to push the code and then have your pipeline actually run, and then your pipeline will stop halfway through because it did not have the right IAM rights and the roles were not set up correctly. And this IAM is a hell on all of cloud platforms. The whole security setup is a hell. So this is why we need to define them. We need to define the roles right here. We need to have the service account right here. When you have the roles, then use something called an array. So this means that you also need to have some variables in the module right here. Variables right here. .tf. And here you can actually define some variables like here we have a variable. This could be roles, and this could be that have the type of an array, a list. Sorry, we'll use a list right here, a list of strings. That is our role, and then we will actually have some default values, and those default values could be something like role on / and then you have to look up which roles that you actually need. Maybe you need some storage admin. Maybe you need some pops up if you need to play around with topics and create topics. Something, and of course you should try not to choose the admin roles. Of course, you need to have the least amounts of roles that you actually need for security reasons, of course. so you would actually set up roles like this, and you will set up your variables right here. If you need some variables, maybe you need a variable One variable that is often needed is project, because usually you would actually have a project per environment actually. If you're dealing with Google, again, let's pretend that we are making something for the Google Cloud, then it's called projects. Then that's how it is divided. So then you would actually have a project name right here, and then we will say this type equals to string right there. And that means that when you are using this, when you're defining all of your variables right here, and then when you use your module in the environment folder from, in this case, the development enabler right here, then you actually have to, first you have to point to the right place, of course. So let us just point to the enabler module right here. And you can see here you get a lot of help. I'm using Intelligent right now, and I have the Terraform plugin installed, and that means that then I'm actually forced to put in all of, not forced, I get a warning that I should actually put in the project name in this situation right here. And so on, so on. So now I have a service account. I have my bucket for storing my Terraform state. Usually I also need a Docker repository, right? Because if I want to push my application, then I also need a Docker registry, not Docker registry.tf like this. So now I have a Docker registry also. I'll define that here with the correct providers and all that. So Docker registry, roles, service accounts, Terraform state bucket. We also need to enable services. That's something you'd have to do. Especially on Google, they have this system where you have to enable services enables .tf or enable. So and then you mention all of the services that you want to enable, and again, of course, you can use variables, and you would use and of course you would use a list once again inside your services enable. Then of course you would use a for each statement. For each statement is something you can run on all of your resources. That means you can go through a list, and then you can use the items in your list, so you don't have to have the same resource type written many times. It's almost like programming, but it is not a programming language. It's actually a language that describes what you want to have in the end, and then Terraform actually figures out how to get to that end. So it's states, based, and that's also why these states files are so important. And at some point, of course, yes, you will get out of sync. I'll create another video on how to get out of sync, but I can quickly spoil it that you can either run the import command, or you can delete the resource that you're out of sync with. But that's another story. Now let us go. We are looking here at the folder setup. So this means that now I have my main right here for development enabler, and I'm only pointing to the enabler module right here. Then in my development environment, this could then be development resources again, and then I could have something called development deploy. This is a good way to split it up. So you have enable that would actually enable you to run the modules with other environments, and that will actually have the state in this folder right here. So this means that that when you configure the backend, then you would actually say that the state file should actually be put locally. I have an example of this, so I'll just copy that. So I have it right here, enable dev, and then we have you can see here we have a local states folder right here, and then we have the two files right here. And it's very important always to push those. So how do we set that up? I use the providers right here. Here I have a Terraform provider, and here it says that the backend should be local. So I'll just copy that. So here I say that the backend should be local, and it should be in this folder right here. If I want to have another folder, then of course I can just choose another folder. But the trick here is for the enable project, it has to be local, because we have not created the buckets where to place the state yet. If you don't like this setup with the local states, then you have to create the first bucket manually up on inside your clouds. It's up to you. I actually like to have this locally to kind of to kind of underline that this is actually the enabler environment, the enabler module that actually enables the rest of them to run. Then we have deploy right here, and we have resources. So we will need to create some more files right here. So we will create another one, main. See, I will actually copy it. So I'll just copy the main file right here, main.tf, and again we can choose what we want to name these files. We can name them whatever. It's a good thing always to have a main.tf file. It's a good idea always to have a variables file. It is also a good idea, instead of actually having this variable right here, if you have a variable that is used more than once, then you will create a locals file. So this is what we want to do here now. So I'll create a locals. That's like, it's like variables, but just only for this environment right here. So that here I will have something called like project name equal to, and then something, and it's good practice to use locals, because then you would not repeat yourself, because maybe you are running multiple modules, which we might do here. Now we want to run the deploy module like this, and the project name that we want to give to that module is then local.project name like this. And now, since we have the bucket, we do not want to place the backend in local folder anymore. Now we want to place it inside the bucket. So I'll delete all of this, and then I have a small snippet right here that I have prepared. Let's go to deploy right here, and I'll go to my providers, and I will say, here we have it, buckets and prefix. You can use the same bucket for all of your environments. Just make sure that this prefix right here is different every time. So you can say maybe Terraform / and then you can call this development deploy. It's a good idea to use the same folder name actually, and then /state. So this means that now we will actually have a bucket inside this bucket right here. My demo bucket like this. Then I will actually have this folder right here where my states will be located in for this environment right here for my deployment. So I'm actually quite happy now. This is a good setup. And then we have the same thing with the resources. Again, I want to use the bucket that I've just created right there. And here again, have a locals project name, that's fine. And again, this time we should have another prefix. And again, we follow the folder standard. So we will say resources like this. And again, we are quite happy. And again, it should be the same bucket. We don't want to change the bucket right here. And here in this situation right here, we want to have the data. This could be the database that we want to create. So I have my modules right here, database. And in this situation, I want to have multiple modules. And these modules, they can talk together if we use output variables. I do not recommend you to use output variables. Actually, I recommend you to use, especially not if it's, I do not recommend you to use output variables if it contains any secrets like a password or a key or a certificate or something like that. Then you should place it in the Google Secret Manager instead. You can do that with Terraform also. You can say that this should actually be placed in Google Secret Manager as a key value item. And then you can go to another module, and then you can actually use that key value item there instead. That's a much better way of actually sharing data than the output variable. Because with the output variable, you will actually always have that information in the state files. The information will actually be saved in the state files. And maybe you don't have the same security on your buckets. Your buckets might be accessible by more people than should have that access, right? And then it's not secure. Okay, so this other module right here, that should then be the network. So this is the network setup. So here we have the networks, and again we do the same. And we say pops up like this, and again here we say pops up. So now here I'm actually running three modules right here, while in the other two I'm actually only running one module. And I think this is a good standard actually, that your deploy would occupy one module, your enabler would occupy also one module, would just be one module, and then you have all of your resources. And your resources, they would usually span over multiple modules. The good thing here is also that you can actually say that these depend on each other. You can say depends on, then you can say that the pops up depends on the database maybe, or something like that, right? I'm just making stuff up. And you can see it's an array, so they can actually also depend on the network like this. So this is Terraform. I would say this is the best practice that I have, that I think that I encourage. And also the documentation mentions the environments. They also mentions the modules, but they do not write the. I don't think that they should have. It is a good documentation, but I just think that there should be more focus on where to store the store the state files, and that these files, it's a normal thing that these files actually get out of sync, because if someone goes in and creates the same resource that you actually have in your state file, then you have to get out of that out of sync state before you can actually continue using Terraform. There are many people, including myself, actually got surprised on how difficult it actually was to get out of sync. Or to get in sync when you're out of sync with your state files. So your state files are very important. You need to push them every time if you have them locally, but do not have them locally. Place them in a bucket. So how does this setup actually work? You have to place yourself in this folder right here, and then you have to run Terraform apply, or Terraform plan, or Terraform destroy. And yeah, so you can write those. You can run those things, but you will run them from the folder, from the environments folder where you want to that they want to use. So if you want to enable, so if you want to apply all of your development enabler things, then you would actually go to that folder, and then you run Terraform apply. A lot of you probably already have a shortcut or that is named TF, an alias named TF instead of Terraform. That's a good thing. There's one thing that's even better. That is if you use a package.json file, and then you can actually just right click and say run. So let us just do that. We will stand here in the Terraform folder. Let me go to my terminal. Then I'll go to best practices. I go to terminal like this. Terraform, sorry. And then I'll say npm init. And then I just press enter a lot of times. And then I end up with a package.json file that I can use for. Here I have my package.json file. And here I can use the script area right here. So I have the script right here, and all of the rest of the stuff. I kind of don't need that. But then I can actually have something like that says development enabler apply, for instance. And then I would make a script like this. I will say change directory, go to environments, and go to development enabler. After doing that, then run Terraform apply. And then minus auto approve if I've tested that it actually works. So this is auto approve. It's a 2 pieces. And I have it's with 2 dashes. I have this prepared also. So I'll just go down here and look. So I have this one right here. Terraform. Auto approve. It's right there. Yes. And of course you have to, before you actually start, you actually have to run init. And just remove this part right here. So here I have it. I want to duplicate this line right here because I actually need to initialize my my state first. I need to download the providers, and that is what I do by running init like this. But you can see the important part is that we actually locate it in the right folder. That's the important part. And then we call Terraform init, and then we call Terraform apply auto approve, or we call the plan if you want to look for errors. Especially, you can see that what I just made there was it's of course not done yet, so that I'll probably have a lot of errors. But you write Terraform plan, and then you can apply, and of course you can also destroy. You can also destroy. And destroy, I would definitely not have auto approve on that. Destroy and destroy right here. And of course, you should avoid using destroy in general. If you want some changes, you just create your changes and then have Terraform actually change whatever you want to change. That's what we need. That's why we have Terraform, right? We have it so. So we want infrastructure as code. That's why we want Terraform, and with this setup right here, and with this folder structure that I've just mentioned right here, then you will be I don't think you will be sorry for this setup right here. If you could do something else, and that is actually to create a whole new Terraform folder named Terraform minus, and then enabler, and then have all of your enabler stuff right there. If you don't want to mix your enabler stuff with the rest of your modules, there are some people that like to have it a bit cleaner, so they don't by mistake actually add some. If I add a new module right here, then I could actually add the enable suddenly. So that is the downside, right? That nothing stops me from doing that. Yeah. Now I've also added the enabler to this environment right here. So, but that's that part is up to you. But I think it's nice to have all of the modules together right here, because then I have one Terraform folder where I have all of my Terraform stuff in, and then I can look at my modules and I can keep track of everything with the main.tf. There, I know that's where I have my module definition with which modules are used. I already have another folder with my providers. I didn't mention that, providers.tf. You want all of your providers right here. That is that is the plugins that actually connects to Google Cloud, to Azure, to Amazon, to whatever infrastructure that you want to provider that you want to connect to. That you will define those in the provider section. The provider section will also have be configurable with variables. Again, place those variables in locals. That's a good it's a good practice, because then you can both use those variables in your provider section and also in your main module section. I hope you got something out of this. Again, this is my best practice, and feel free to challenge it. Everybody can get better. So this is just how I like to get started with some Terraform. I created an enabler project, I have my resources, and then I have my deployment, and all of those are separated. And a lot of times, actually, when my resources have been run after some time, then it's very rare that you actually have to rerun them. So they would just be in whatever state they need to be in for in a very long time. Sometimes you want to split up your resources in environments, and that is if it takes a long time, and also if your Terraform script, sometimes you actually trick your Terraform scripts to actually delete the resource and then create it again. And the reason why I do that is because it's not all of these Terraform resources and the providers that are equally good at actually updating whatever you need to update. And also sometimes you update something that is so central that it actually the provider has to delete the resource and then recreate it. Like if you change the region from where the resource should operate in, then Terraform would say, okay, I have to delete this first, and then I have to recreate it in the other region that you wanted this resource in. But that's just that is how it is, and so. Always of this resources module, it could be split up. This resource environment, it could also be split up, but usually most of the times you just want one resources environment, and then you have your deployment environment, you have your enabler environment, and then of course you have a lot of modules. You have a lot of resource modules. You have a network module, PubSub module, database module, but you only have one deployed module. You only have one enabler module. And then you will be very happy, and you will have fun with Terraform, and you will come to like it just as much as me. I think it's awesome. It's a cool way to actually keep track of everything, and there's good documentation from all of the providers. So it's actually many times it's much easier actually to use Terraform scripts than it is to try to click something up manually in a web console. Thank you very much for watching. I hope to see you again soon. Bye bye.